Shadar. The trade conversation surrounding Freddy Peralta was never a secret. It's a dialogue that has been simmering for months now, tracing all the way back to the general managers' meetings in November.
Seda. The initial stance from Matt Arnold, the Brewers GM, was crystal clear. Peralta was off the table. He simply was not being moved. But in baseball, as in life, intentions change.
When you analyze the materializing shape of the Brewers' starting rotation and factor in Milwaukee's historical tendency to make tough decisions regarding their pitching assets, especially those whose service time is dwindling, it became imperative for the Mets to maintain a relentless pursuit.
Peralta felt like the kind of asset you just needed to stay on top of. And this is where the unseen machinations of the front office pay dividends.
David Stern's existing relationship with Matt Arnold was undeniably a vital lubricant in making this complex transaction flow smoothly.
You have to give the Mets organization immense credit for their patience, a quality that rarely survives the long, cold winter months of the MLB offseason.
While they maintained their focus on Peralta, they simultaneously pursued multiple other avenues. There were numerous options on the table, ranging across both trade targets and top-tier free agents, right up until the afternoon press conference announcing the arrival of another major piece.
Stearns was multitasking, operating several high-stakes negotiations concurrently.
Then, quickly, perhaps even a little unexpectedly, the Peralta deal began to truly materialize.
It gained momentum so rapidly that the Mets were able to expand the scope, ensuring the inclusion of Tobias Meyers, a controllable arm for the next 5 seasons, who offers valuable flexibility as a starter or a reliever.
Securing Myers provided the necessary depth and comfort level for the Mets to feel confident in moving forward with the sacrifice required, shipping out both Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat.
It's often amazing how these massive transactions finally culminate.
Shada, you spend an entire winter taking countless shots at various targets, unable to connect. You start walking down half a dozen divergent roads, and then, in a blink, the deal you truly wanted snaps into focus.
That's precisely how the acquisition of Freddy Peralta unfolded for the Mets.
Shada. In the heat of the moment, the inevitable question arises. Did the Mets give up too much, or was the cost justified? Looking objectively at the market, I believe the latter is true.
Listen, the price of premium starting pitching has been astronomical this year, a trend that only intensified over the last several winters, and understandably so.
Finding a reliable, top-of-the-rotation arm is the hardest commodity to acquire in baseball.
Peralta is precisely that, a legitimate frontline starter, whom I view as a strong number 2, instantly providing the Mets with 3 reliable postseason caliber starters.
When assessing the overall haul they gave up, they maintained crucial depth. They didn't have to touch pitching prospects like Jonah Tong.
Obviously, they weren't going to move Kodai Senga or anyone else from the top tier. Christian Scott is still coming back into the system.
The organization now possesses legitimate arms at the upper levels, adding critical layers to their overall pitching depth, a luxury they simply did not possess last year when all their best prospects were forced into immediate action.
Shada. This depth is what made Sproat expendable. The hardest part, however, is parting ways with Jet Williams.
Shada. The Mets genuinely liked Williams, but he fits the mold of a Brewers guy, a player who emphasizes running, putting the ball in play, the high contact rates over power, aligning perfectly with philosophy of Milwaukee.
While Williams ranks highly on many prospect lists and his loss stings,
The Mets ultimately secured the elite starter they had coveted for months.
It is incredibly difficult to acquire a top-of-the-rotation pitcher via trade.
Therefore, the prospect capital the Mets expended is entirely reasonable, especially when you compare it to the utterly ridiculous asking prices I'd heard bandied about for lesser arms. For instance, the rumored demand for Mackenzie Gore, which involved multiple high-end pieces for a pitcher who, frankly, doesn't command that level of prospect investment.
That is the constant balancing act a general manager must navigate in the front office. The Mets acquired a bona fide number 2 in Peralta, plus the added bonus of Myers for a reasonable exchange rate. Davis Stearns has completely remodeled this franchise this winter.
The organization has undergone a massive transformation in the last week alone, with the blockbuster acquisitions of the MVP caliber talent in Mookie Betts, the dynamic young star in Luis Robert Jr.,
And now the frontline starter in Freddy Peralta.
A week ago, the Mets were reeling from missing out on several key targets, leaving a cloud of uncertainty over the direction of the franchise. Now, we are looking at a fundamentally different team with a completely different competitive feel. They are unequivocally a legitimate contending team heading into the 2026 season. When you scan the rest of the division, the Mets' position looks even stronger. There is clear frustration and anxiety in Philadelphia over their inability to secure bets, and their off-season moves appear limited.
Atlanta is recovering from a surprisingly down year.
Cheddar. Division said undoubtedly be stronger overall. The Marlins are improving, and we wait and see on the Nationals. The Mets stack up incredibly well against nearly every team in the National League. Cheddar. Perhaps only the Dodgers separate themselves entirely, but this has been a huge, successful rebound for the Mets winter, culminating in an unbelievable 7-day progression.
This all, of course, raises questions about the future. Peralta is currently a rental, and the expectation is that he will hit free agency.
Likewise, other elite talents are expected to test the market, setting the stage for one of the most intriguing pitching free agent markets in recent memory, likely following a pivotal collective bargaining deadline.
Cheddar. We are already anticipating the looming specter of a lockout, which many in the industry view as almost a foregone conclusion. Prior to that, we will witness a spending frenzy, similar to what we saw a few years ago, the year the Mets acquired Max Scherzer, where money was flying, records were set for average annual value for starting pitchers, and teams scrambled before the December 1st signing deadline.
It will be an absolute frenzy for high-quality starters.
Peralta is exactly the kind of pitcher big market teams will prioritize. His agency knows his value. He has proven his ability to stay healthy, averaging 30 starts over the last 3 seasons, logging high innings.
He is the type of player the Mets should be aggressively trying to lock up now, exploring any appetite for a contract extension over the next few months.
Cheddar. Regardless of that outcome, the Mets are now exceptionally well positioned, both with their newly acquired depth and the substantial capital they possess, to withstand the inevitable high costs of the future free agent market.
But worrying about the winter of 2027 feels like a lifetime away right now.